Hey, folks, thanks for coming back and tuning into part two of this week's show featuring my conversation with 1978 PGA champion John Mahaffey. John has become a wonderful friend of this show and somebody who is very, very important to me. In this week's segment, John and I are going to go back. We'll talk about the important impact that Arnold Palmer had on his life. We'll also get his thoughts on the PGA Tour playoff system. Is it something we need or not? Also get his thoughts on the Player of the Year, the upcoming President's Cup. Plus, we'll also talk about Deane Beman's impact and if we would be in this fractured world of professional golf on the men's side if Deane Beman were still commissioner. And then we'll go back to his college days at the University of Houston and talk about the national championships that he and the team won, plus the rich history that the University of Houston has in men's college golf. So a lot to get into this week with John. I thank you so much for being here. So sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next hour or so. Before we get started, I want to remind you about our friends over at 2 Under. 2 Under men's performance briefs are the unofficial underwear of the PGA, Ryder Cup, and President's Cup teams, and are sold in over 3,000 golf pro shops and golf specialty retailers nationwide. Ricky Fowler is their global ambassador, and over 50 other PGA, Korn Ferry, and Champions Tour players wear them. Just to mention a few, they are David Toms, Jerry Kelly, Justin Thomas, William McGirt, Scott McCarron, and Chris DeMarco. The Joey Pouch technology provides the ultimate male asset management, delivering maximum comfort from the tee box to the boardroom to the bedroom. Go to 2under.com to check out the bundle specials that offer substantial discounts for being a Next on the Tee listener. That's the number 2, UNDR.com. 2 Under, performance in your pants.
Every January, PGA Tour Superstore pros meet every manufacturer, learn about the latest equipment, log thousands of hours of training, and together hit over 100,000 balls. All so they can get you the perfect fit.
Okay, now back, and I'm humbled to say this, for the 8th time with me is 1978 PGA champion and 1986 Players champion, John Mahaffey. The number of times that John has been here should tell you a couple things. A, how lucky I am for having him on the show that many times, and B, how much John has meant to me in this show over the years. He has been a treasure since he first joined me a few years ago. As a player, he was both great as an amateur and as a professional. Played his college golf at the University of Houston, where he was named a first-team All-American in 1969 and 70. John won the individual title at the National Championship in 1970 as well. He helped the Cougars win back-to-back national championships, as a matter of fact, in 69 and 70. He was inducted into their Athletics Hall of Honor in 1976. He won 10 times out on the PGA Tour, including that 78 PGA Championship in my hometown of Pittsburgh at Oakmont, when he came from 7 strokes back with 14 holes to play to win in a playoff. He also won the 86 Players Championship by beating Larry Mize by a stroke. He won once out on the Champions Tour. He was a member of the victorious 1979 Ryder Cup team. In 1983, he was inducted into the Texas Golf Hall of Fame. He has written several wonderful books, including Hogan's Boy, A Journey in Golf, plus a golf-related mystery novel series around Trey McCall, a fictitious golf superstar on the rise who gets into all kinds of hair-raising situations. It's called the Nemesis series, and the individual books are titled Shafted, Unfinished Business, and Dead Quiet, plus he's got several more on the way in that. You can get your copy of those books by going online to johnmahaffeyauthor.com or going out to Amazon, and I couldn't be more excited that I get to have John back with me again this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, John, how are you, my friend?
That's the longest introduction I've ever had, and I appreciate that, Chris. And it's great to be back with you.
I appreciate you. John, a theme of this week's show has been relationships with Arnold Palmer on what would have been his 95th birthday. I wanted to start by going back. I know you and I have talked about this in the past, but I wanted to hear some of your favorite stories about playing alongside Mr. Palmer or times you may have had away from the golf course with him.
Well, I didn't get to spend enough time with him off the golf course. He was pretty busy with signing autographs and all that kind of stuff. And we didn't run quite in the same circles when I first got out there. But Arnold became a very good friend of mine. And I'll never forget, he always he always seemed to be looking out for her. I remember I got in kind of bad times. I'd say a rough spot, a rough patch where I had a very bad problem with alcohol. And Arnold Palmer was one of the guys that came up to me and he says, put his arm around me. And he said, young man, he said, I got to tell you something. He said, you're too good a player. You're too good a person to go through this kind of stuff. If you can't control it, you just got to get rid of it. And he's one of the first guys that gave me the inspiration to do that. And that was prior to the year 2000 when I did stop. And that's been, and I haven't had a drink in 24 years. So I think it took. But every time I saw Arnold after that one particular time, he came up to me and said, how we doing? You all right? He says, you look all right. He said, I think you're on the right path. So somebody that's that concerned, I mean, we called him the king, and there was a reason, because he took care of all of us. We were his people, and he wanted everybody to enjoy the game and life as much as he did. And he was always an inspiration to me as a kid growing up. He was one of my heroes with Arnie's Army and the Arnold Palmer Charge, and he and Ben Hogan were my two heroes. So to have him take the time to really put his arm around my shoulder and say, you know what, son, you need to straighten up. And that meant a lot. It still does.
And you won that PGA Championship at Oakmont right there in his backyard. Was he around when you won that tournament?
No, he did not. He and Nicholas both missed the cut there. But I did have a wonderful time with when Arnold played his last round in the U.S. Open at Oakmont. Rocco Mediate and I were paired with him for the first 36 holes. And it was the most incredible thing I think I've ever seen, Chris. Every single hole for 36 holes, he got a standing ovation going to every green, and it was well deserved.
It had to be kind of emotional. I'm sure it was very emotional for him, but almost vicariously through him as you're walking and trying to play in a major championship, by the way. But to be try to keep your composure, try to keep your focus as all that's going on around you, had to be an emotional goodbye for him, but it sort of had to wear onto you as well.
Well, it was no bother at all. We all knew what Arnold did for us. We wouldn't have been where we were without Arnold Palmer. So everything that he did, he deserved all the accolades that he got. I remember him walking up to the final green, the 36th hole. He missed the cut, and I remember him walking up to the green, and we all, Rocco and I, stopped about 30 yards short of the green to let him get his just reward as he walked up on the green. And he looked back at us and he just gave us that wave of his, like, come on, guys. Like it was no big deal, but you could almost see the tears running down his face. He loved the game so much, and he gave back to the game so much. It's that there aren't any more Arnold Palmer.
John, switching gears a little bit. We're on the heels now of the Tour Championship played here in Atlanta. Were you in town and able to go over to Eastlake, or did you get a chance to check it out on TV?
I did not. But in fact, I've never been over to Eastlake.
Is that right?
No, I haven't. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
I kind of put the golf clubs away in 2019, and I had some hip issues and so forth, and never could get back to where I could play halfway decent. So I keep up with it. I watch a little bit of it, but not as much as I used to. When I worked the Golf Channel, I was all over it. But I still keep in touch with it, though. I miss it. I miss the competition.
Do you like the fact that there is a playoff system on the PGA Tour, or is that something we don't need?
I don't like the way it is set up. I think they could do a better job. What I would do, I don't know what I would do, but it just seemed a little bit hokey to me.
John, looking ahead a couple of weeks, we've got the President's Cup coming up. It doesn't have near the passion and rivalry that the Ryder Cup has. It may be because it's not nearly as old, or the fact that the international team hardly has ever won the thing. They've only won it one time. There was a tie once as well, but that doesn't, to me, that's not a rivalry. You can't have a rivalry when the other team never wins. What's your thoughts on the President's Cup?
Well, you nailed it. That's exactly the way I felt about it. I never played on a President's Cup team because I think I was probably too old and out of it by then. But I played on a Ryder Cup team, and I'll tell you what, that is the most emotional thing I've ever had. It individually happened to me playing golf. The most afraid I've ever been stepping up to the first tee in a Ryder Cup and hitting a tee shot. I mean, after they played the Star Spangled Banner, and you're all psyched up, and your hands are shaking like crazy, and you're just hoping you can make contact. It was, and to be on a winning Ryder Cup team was very, very special.
And you were playing out there in the Ryder Cup when the U.S. was dominating that thing year after year, yet you were still that nervous. I'm surprised because
Well, the
we had
Europeans,
such a great run.
Yeah, well, that was the first year the Europeans came. All of Europe was united to play, and so it was. We knew we had our work cut out for us to handle it, but then they grew and they grew and they grew with Seve being the real inspiration behind that whole thing. He was fantastic, and and he helped it grow as much as anybody, if not more.
John, I was talking to Tom Percher last week and Tom Patry earlier in this week's show, and I asked them, and I want to get your thoughts as well, obviously, but to me, Deane Beman is the best PGA Tour commissioner that we've had over the last 60 years, over the course of my lifetime. I don't believe the pro game would be splintered the way it is today if Deane were still commissioner. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're not. I had the good fortune to be on two policy boards with Deane Beman as a commissioner. And I played against Deane Beman as a player. I knew him as a friend, and I knew him as a businessman. And I think with everything he had, he got along with the sponsors. He got along with the players. He knew golf. He'd won at every level, and he was innovative in the things that he did with the players clubs and stadium golf, and setting up the tour deferred pension plan that we have. All these things that he did to make the tour better, to build the players club franchises and so forth, so that you could build up a reserve. So in case the economy got bad, that you could at least play for the same amount of money for 10 years. He had foresight for all this kind of stuff, far more than I think we've had lately.
John, I've heard several of your peers talk over the course of time about when they got out on tour, having to learn how to win. Tom Watson recently talked about the tournaments he gave away early in his career because he didn't know how to win. It may sound strange, but how do you learn how to win?
Win. Winning breeds winning. It does. I I was lucky enough to win my second year on the tour. I won in Las Vegas my first tournament, but I didn't win again. That was in 1973, and I didn't win again until 1978. And I'd lost back-to-back U.S. Opens in 1975 and 76, and I was beginning to wonder. I'd already won a tournament. Yeah, okay, but am I going to win any more? And I was lucky enough to have a decent comeback at Oakmont and win the golf tournament over Tom Watson, by the way, who was one of my best friends at the time. But that never entered into it while we were competing, ever.
John, going back to your days at the University of Houston, you played for Dave Williams. I imagine coaching styles today aren't anything near what they used to be like when you were playing in college and playing for Dave. What was his coaching style like?
Well, things were a lot different back then, too. I mean, we had like 30 guys on our freshman team. Freshmen weren't eligible to play on the varsity at that time. So you had two freshman teams that went and played freshman tournaments, like 5 of them in the year. And he had all these people that he recruited. And so we probably had 40, 50 guys in the athletic door. And we were all out qualifying, all out playing. So by the time we played tournaments and all kinds of stuff. We didn't play matches. We played tournaments, played in all kinds of weather, played all over the country. So, I mean, when we got to the NCAA, he had the 5 guys he wanted to have. No doubt about it. And so, I mean, he went to watched all the junior tournaments throughout the country. And he'd go try to recruit all the junior players that won all these tournaments, all the state junior champions. So when I got to school, I mean, everybody on our team could play. So you really had to get after it. I remember one of the upperclassmen, Bob Barbarossa, we would have guys, they would help us if you really needed help, if they knew that you were going to work on your game, and then, try to be part of the team and try to win the NCAAs. That was our whole purpose, NCAA. From the first meeting on, it was NCAA, NCAA to NCAA. So by the time you got there, you figured you better win it. And we won our share. We really did. But we had guys, Bob Barbarossa. When I grew up in Kerrville, Texas, we didn't even have a sand trap, Kerrville, Texas, or bunker. I had no idea what it was. So, and I learned I tried to chip out of them and everything else. And we had a little golf course where we could go practice called Houston Exec over on Wayside Boulevard. And they had a little practice area, but they had a practice green with a bunker. So, and we could hit our own balls, pick them up, and then go and then work on our short games after that. Anyway, Bob Barbarossa came over and watched me hit some bunker shots and started laughing. And I said, what are you laughing? He said, man, that's horrible. He said, let me show you something. And he started talking to me about it. I figured, he said, well, Julius Boros told me. I said, you know Julius Boros? He said, yeah, he taught me how to play bunker shots. So I listened very, very carefully. Julius was probably one of the best bunker players ever. So Bob Barbarossa taught me how to play bunker shots, but that's kind of what we had. We couldn't join a fraternity, so we were our own fraternity, and we were very, very close, and I think that helped us win a lot of national championships.
Yeah, so I want to take that a step further, because he took Houston to 33 national championship appearances and won nearly half of them, 16.
Right.
Houston won. You guys won 4 national championships in the 50s. 6 in the 60s, 2 more in the 70s, 3 in the 80s. So when you came to play for the Houston Cougars back in those days, you guys were almost expected to win a national championship. Did that put added pressure on you guys and the guys that went there in your freshman years and whatnot? Because you weren't hoping to win. You guys were expected to win.
Right. I don't think it put pressure on us. I think it put pressure on us to make the team. You wanted to be on that national championship team. So, I mean, I've never worked harder in my life. I probably played more in practice more than I did on the tour, trying to get on that golf team. There was a guy that went from Del Rio, Texas, by the name of Hal Underwood, who was captain of the team, and he'd been on I went in there in 1966. So he actually had talked to the coach about recruiting me, and coach says, well, he looked at it, and I was running up to state, in the state junior, and I won a bunch of tournaments in my district and stuff like that. And he says, well, Dave says, well, why do you think this kid can play? He says, he made 40 points in the basketball team, coach. He's only 5'9". And he said, he's got heart. He said, that's what we want. We want heart. And I'll never forget that. Dave Williams told me that. Hal never told me that, but Dave Williams told me that. He said, that's how you got here.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So it didn't have to do all about golf. It had to do about attitude and we expected to win when we got there. We really did. And in my sophomore year, unfortunately, one of our guys finished bad the last day. We'd have won 3 in a row while I was in college. And we were second in Las Cruces, 1968. So I got some great memories. Had some great teammates. Bruce Litsky, God rest his soul. He was priceless. Loved his cars. He'd drive. He wanted to drive, and we had this big old station wagon that we take on trips. And Dave Williams would get in the back on this mattress and go to sleep, and Litsky would floor it. And we were going through New Mexico, Arizona, New Mexico, and stuff, doing 120.
Oh, my.
Oh, yeah. Bruce could drive. I mean, he's a race driver. He worked on his own cars and stuff. He was unbelievable. And Jim McLean, the great teacher,
yeah,
he was there. And John Mills was on one of our teams. Tom Jenkins, Bob Barbarossa, Hal Underwood. I mean, I played with a lot of really terrific guys. Doug Olson from up in the Northwest. We had so many really. Johnny Grace, he was runner up to Jerry Pate in the U.S. Amateur. He was one of my roommates. I mean, we had some of the best players. Bruce Ashworth out of Arizona. I mean, out of Las Vegas. I mean, we had some guys that could really, really go. And it was tough to make that team and stay on it. You better not shoot in the 80s.
John, switching over to your broadcasting career, I'm always curious. How did you go about preparing yourself heading into a broadcast for the tournament, whatever was coming up that week? How did you get yourself prepped and ready to go and be out there?
I showed up.
That's it? That's all you had to do?
Basically, my wife. See, I didn't want to do it. I really didn't want to do it, Chris. My wife and some of the guys at the Golf Channel wanted me to do it, and I really didn't want to. And finally, they kept coming after me and asking. Said, and finally, Keith Hirschland called me, one of the producers. He said, "Look," he says, I'm gonna come out with it. You can't play dead right now, okay?" He said, "You're trying not to finish last. We'd like to try you out. We think you'd be good as a broadcaster. Tell you what, you're playing the Pro-Am tomorrow morning over here wherever we were at the time." He says, "And why don't you come over to the television compound? I'm going to put some earphones and stuff and a pack on you, and let you go out there and see if you can do this. Give you a microphone, see if you can do this." And I did okay, just doing it like that. And he says, "Okay." And I was playing bad enough, Chris, that I could play in the mornings in the tournaments and still do the TV broadcast in the afternoon. So I'd seen the golf course. And actually, my wife, going back a little bit, my wife talked to me after Keith called her, I think. She won't admit to it, but and he says, "We'd really like him to try out." So Elizabeth came up to me. She says, "Look, I want you to do this." I said, "Baby, I really don't want to. I can still play." "No, you can't. You got to know that. You can't. Those days are gone." And I said, "Well, what makes you think I can do this? Just tell me that." She said, "Well, let's see. You know the players, you know the game, you know the golf courses, and you're not afraid to state your opinion. Anything else?" And I kind of went, "Well, you can't fight that, can you?" So, and then I get teamed up with Lanny Watkins a couple of years in, and we had a great time. Bob Papa and Brian Hammonds and the whole group. I mean, it was great. I had a ball. I had another family on the road, and they were great. They taught me so much. I learned so much. I had 15 years, and it was time for me to go. I think I was losing a step, and they had some young talent they wanted to come up, and that's fine. I really didn't mind it as much as people thought, because I wanted to write, and I wanted to write some different books, not just Hogan's Boy, which I really enjoyed, but that was my history. That's sort of autobiographical. But these other things had a little bit about golf, but it had a lot about life, and that's what I kind of wanted to get into. And you mentioned earlier in the introduction about the 3 books I have out. Well, Blindsided is my 4th book, and it's now in its final edit, and it'll be going to print pretty soon. And I got Hoodwinked that it's in its first edit, and I've got one called Open Season that's about a third of the way done. So and these are all I think people would really enjoy reading these things, because it's not all about golf, and it's about life, and it's about retribution, it's about karma, and it's about a saga of a family that goes through all kinds of torment to get where they're trying to go, and they're trying to make it better for the world. And I'm having a ball writing them. I really am.
So that begs the question. We got to let people know, how can they go out and get copies of the first 3 that are out? And when is Blindsided, do you think, going to be available for us to go out and add to the collection?
Well, Blindsided, when they get it in proofing where it is right now, then it has to get laid out, and that takes time. I have to wait in sort of in a queue to get into this kind of stuff, so that can be as much as 2 or 3 months. But I'm faking them out now, because I threw Hoodwinked right in behind it. So now I'm going to have that one up quicker, and now Open Season is going to be right after that. So you can go to Amazon.com and just look up just John Mahaffey. That's all you have to do.
John, it's always a privilege to get to spend some time with you, my friend. I can't thank you enough for everything that you have meant to me and to this show, and the wonderful stories that you have shared over the previous 7 times, and now tonight for an 8th time. I can't thank you enough for continuing to come back and share your stories. I hope we get this privilege again before the year is out.
I do too. I'd love to do it. You're the best, you know.
I appreciate that you think so. It means a lot to me.
All right.
John, take care, my friend. All the best to you and your family. Look forward to catching up with you again soon.
I appreciate it, and all the best to you as well, Chris.
Thanks, John. That is the great John Mahaffey, folks. And again, the Nemesis series is available for you to go out there and purchase the first 3 installments. And that, again, Shafted, Unfinished Business, and Dead Quiet. Looking forward to Blindsided and then Hoodwinked right behind that. And I'm sure Open Season, John enjoys writing it so much. I'm sure that's going to become available before you know it. John Mahaffey, folks, is just one of the great people you get to meet in this life, and certainly within the golf industry. He was a wonderful player, a fantastic broadcaster, and you can tell, but just by listening to the way that he answers the questions and tells his stories, he's a wonderful human being on top of all of that. That is one of the things that I am so blessed about. Again, John on the show now 8 times. But to be able to talk to so many wonderful people inside this game, and that were players and out on the Legends Tour, and now some of these guys are retired, but John went out there and he did great things from the moment he stepped foot on a golf course all the way through the time when he decided, as you heard, to walk away from being a broadcaster. Great player, and in college, he was a multi-time first-team All-American, won a national championship, helped his team win a second one, and then he goes out on tour. He wins a major championship, depending on how you view the players, potentially a second major, and then all the way through to his time out on the Champions Tour. And then to take all of that, whether he wanted to or not, was a fantastic broadcaster, a guy that I miss being in the booth and out on the golf course. I wish we could have him in the booth. So many guys are going into the booth nowadays, and it seems like it's sort of on the job, not on the job training, but sort of on the job interviews. Let's try this guy. Let's try that guy. Let's try another guy. When the guys that we had for so many years are still so talented, I don't care how old they are, they know the game, like John talked about. Knows the game, knows the golf courses, knows the players. Seems like the perfect fit for a guy who should still be in the booth. Anyway, he's enjoying his time as a writer, and he's a fantastic one of those. Hopefully we get the opportunity to catch up with John a little bit later on in the year. All right, my friends, it is time for me to put a bow on this week's edition of Next on the Tee. I want to send out my sincere thanks again to Tom Coyne, John Mahaffey, and Tom Patry for joining me this week. Scheduled to join me next week are former president of the PGA of America, now president of Golf Nation, Susie Whaley, will be back. One of the great legends on the LPGA Tour and a PGA professional who's doing great things in the Western Pennsylvania section, Missy Bertiotti, will make a long overdue return visit with me. And then the director of instruction at Bethpage State Park, Megan Yonkman, will be back, and they're getting ready for the Ryder Cup next year. So looking forward to having Megan back as part of the show. It's going to be a big one. I hope you'll come back and be a part of it with us. I want to send out my thanks again to our friends over at the Pittsburgh Tribune Review for hosting this show on their site and for their great coverage that they do every single day of Western Pennsylvania, particularly on the sports side. As you know, huge Steelers fan, grew up in the state of Pennsylvania, in the city of Pittsburgh. Go out there on triblive.com, and then you're going to click on the sports section. You'll find Next on the Tee available right there for you on the homepage of that sports section. If you click on podcast, then you'll be able to look at several of our episodes from this season available for you right there as well. You can also find this show on Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audio Boom, where pretty much anywhere you get your podcast content, you're going to find Next on the Tee there. And my sincere thanks to the folks over at Good Pods for making this show one of their recommended podcasts. So please download their free app and stream your favorite podcast on your favorite device. But like I say every single week, most of all, my sincere thanks go out to all of you for being the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts. I appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.